I really want to welcome everyone to Yale Law School Alumni Weekend 2025. It's great having you all back in New Haven. Thanks for being here. And on a personal note, I want to welcome all my classmates from the class of 2005. It's really fun to have you. As you can see, we have four incredible deans in front of you. They don't really need an introduction, but we do introductions around here, so here I am. In kind of reverse chronological order. So Heather Gerken, who my friend, who was dean of Yale until not many months ago, and is the incoming president of the Ford Foundation. And I think Heather's deanship was remarkable for many reasons, but among them was a real focus on accessibility and making law school available to people who it wasn't as available to for a long time. And I think that's one of many extraordinary parts of her deanship. Tony Kronman. Oh no, sorry, Harold. I'm trying to do reverse chronological order in my head. Harold Coe, who kind of really elevated the global nature of the law school and kind of reflecting his career interests, kind of encouraged all of us to be less nationally parochial in what a law school could be. He was also, kind of from a personal perspective, the dean who hired me and was the dean when I graduated. Tony, who really kind of emphasized the humanism inherent in a good law school education, and also had an incredible record of hiring faculty, the legacy of which is very much with us today. And then finally, Guido, who needs no introduction. And I also want to introduce Tali Farhadian Weinstein, who's going to be moderating this conversation. Tali is a very illustrious graduate of this law school. She's dedicated her whole career to public service. Starting with a Coker Fellowship in her third year, clerkships with Sandra Day O'Connor and Merrick Garland, serving as a federal prosecutor, general counsel of the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, among many, many other things that continue on to this day. Time and time again, Tali has defended the rule of law and kind of really emphasizes how much of a precious gift that is to all of us and to our country. So with that, I would ordinarily just start the proceedings, but we have one more thing to do, which is that I have it on good authority that it is someone on the panel's birthday. And that someone is Guido. So Guido, thank you. Until I hope you're doing this event until 120, and we just can't thank you enough. And I think one way we'll thank you a little is by singing "Happy Birthday." So let's do it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Guido. Happy birthday to you.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening, fellow alumni. Let me first say this is a very weird sensation to be up at the podium while my teachers are sitting in the seats over here below. I'm very happy to be back here and to have this gang back together for the second annual Panel of Deans at Alumni Weekend. So we have an hour together. I'm going to start by asking the panelists individual questions about their leadership and about this beloved institution. And then we're going to do a lightning round. I will ask all of you questions in succession. Each of you will answer every question quick as lightning. See, the authority, it's amazing. Okay, Guido, of course, I'm going to start with you. Happy birthday. So I just confirmed with you that you started teaching in this law school in 1959.
Speak into the mic.
Is that better? I was trying to manage the mic while not being blinded by the lights. Guido. So since 1959, you have seen countless students come and go. I think you probably know more YLS students and graduates than any person on earth. And I wanted to ask you, in that time, how has the student body changed, for better or for worse?
So, get up. First, it may seem that my birthday is tomorrow, but I was born in Italy, and that's 6 hours later. So that actually, today, now is my birthday. So thank you for that. As to students, the fact of the matter is that they have not changed. You are all as wonderful now as you were then. I look out and I see two of my classmates who are here. I see Himmelfarb, who was the first monster in my torts class. I see Vicky Jansen. I see people from every class, the class of 05, all of these classes, and they all have the same qualities of desire for idealism, desire to do good, and desire to look after themselves. What doesn't change from time to time is how those things are. So individual classes are really very different. When I was dean and I'd speak, say, to one class, and then another class of 3 years later, I'd think of how different they were in things of the outside world pressing in. Some classes were very concerned with doing good, and sometimes in so much of a hurry to do good that they didn't take the time to learn how to do it. There were other classes who were too concerned with doing well for themselves, and our job was to broaden them and make them do good. That remains, and it is how the outside world presses on these wonderful people. And the challenge of the school is not the quality of the students, which remains the same, but always to speak to the particular things that the time the outside world is pushing on them, and to make them do the best that they can and that this school can do. So you haven't changed. Keep it up.
Thank you, Guido. Heather, let's continue on this subject of who our students are. But before, I do want to say, on behalf of everyone in this auditorium, congratulations on becoming the president of the Ford Foundation. We are so proud. So you stepped down a few months ago from dean to take on this new role, so it's time to talk about your legacy. And I think Yair said it exactly right, that your legacy is going to center around access, because you opened the doors of this school wider than they'd been opened before. You launched the Psi Leadership Program, the Hearst Horizon Scholarship Program, among other things. The school's veteran community grew tenfold during your deanship. So I hope you could tell us a bit why you focused on access so deliberately and what you hope your successor will do next to continue in this work.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting this. This is wonderful. I've always loved this place, and I've always loved it because it believes in excellence in its students. So Guido's exactly right. Everyone has remained excellent. But if you're really searching for excellence, you have to look for it everywhere. And so my aim during the deanship was to make sure that every excellent student, every single one, came here and thrived. And so we did a couple of things. One was to build out pipelines. So when I started, it was 1% veterans. Now it was 10% in last year's first-year class. You look at the veterans and you think, how is it possible that we could survive without this many veterans in our midst? They are astonishing, but it did take time for them to find their way here. The Hearst Horizon Scholarship Program right now, there are 96 students walking these halls on full tuition scholarships. Every one of those students did the astonishing things that their peers did, but they did it coming from a place which was much more challenging than others. So they all came from families who are just below or above the poverty line. And I'll just say the last thing that I got to build alongside our Dean Ingber was the second of a pipeline program. James Foreman has a pipeline program that focuses on New Haven. This is a nationwide pipeline program that we created. It has been amazing. So I'll just give you, last year, when we started this pipeline program, I said, we're not doing it to yield. The odds of getting to Yale Law School are 1 in a billion. We're just doing it to model to other schools. You need to build the pipeline. So I said, I don't expect to admit any of these students. We're going to do it for the right reasons. The students were astonishing. All we gave these kids was essentially what every middle-class kid gets: a mentor, help on the LSAT, some help with their application process. Some of these students, their LSATs went up 30, 40 points. They were scoring in the high 170s. That is a life-changing transformation. And those students ran the tables. And we, I call every new admit, but I'm the second call because most of them don't believe that they've been admitted. And so they call back. It's very inefficient if you're a dean. But I called every one of the students in the pipeline program to say, we've just admitted you to Yale Law School. I cannot tell you what that meant. And to me, that is the embodiment of the two things that Guido always says matter here, which are excellence and humanity.
Tony, I'm going to jump to you. We've talked about who our students are. I want to talk about the classroom and what happens inside of it. You were a teacher before you became dean, and then you went back to the classroom. Tell us how the culture of the classroom has changed in the time that you've been on the faculty. How would you define that culture, and what makes Yale Law School such a special place to study law?
I loved being dean. I got to do things and go places and meet people that I never would in my wildest imaginings have dreamt that I would have been able to do before I became the dean. But I took my bearings as the dean from my experience as a teacher. That has still shapes my sense of this place and my deep attachment to it and my values, which are the values of the school. And I think that's true for all of us. We are teachers first before we came to the deanship, and we taught and we were deans from the vantage point of our experience as teachers. I taught this morning my small group in constitutional law. I have 17 kids. It was a tough topic. The conversation was animated. It was fractious. I thought the room was going to levitate at a certain point. And afterwards, I was reflecting, and I thought to myself, well, how different was that experience from the experience I had teaching my very first class at the Yale Law School, which was also a small group in contracts, not constitutional law. And I answered to myself, not different at all, really. It was just pretty much the same. How different was it from my experience in my own small group class when I was a student at the Yale Law School? Not much different at all. The differences are superficial. The continuities are deep. So what are the continuities? What defines the durable culture of this place, which is exemplified, manifest in every single class that's taught in this building? Guido, trying to capture the spirit of the place, reached for a distinction, an antinomy almost. He said the Yale Law School stands for excellence and humanity. And these are ideas which are not only point in different directions, but there's some tension between them. Excellence suggests rank, achievement, distinction, maybe even hierarchy. Humanity suggests equality, democracy, opportunity, universalism. And I believe that Guido's thought, which is a true thought, is that the Yale Law School lives in the productive tension between these two ideas. So I would propose, if asked to define the culture, the enduring culture of the Yale Law School classroom, I would propose another antinomy. I would say it is defined by a spirit of sobriety and madness. You all know the madness. I'll say a word about that in just a minute, but the sobriety is important too. When I came here as a law student, my head was filled with all sorts of grand ideas, and some of the edges got worn off of their grandeur pretty quickly. I discovered that the law is a complicated thing, that life is a complicated thing, and that as a lawyer I would be expected to be, I wanted to be a custodian, a trustee, a bearer of this complicated, rich civilization of law that I had, that we all have inherited. It's a very precious, precious thing. That, in my case, and I think in the case of many, if not most, students who have this experience, induces a kind of I would call it maybe even a conservative habit of mind, or if the word offends you, a habit of conserving, of looking after and taking care. But then there is the madness. There is not a class in this building in which some really wild and reckless, irresponsible, beautiful, dangerous, thrilling, world-expanding idea isn't floated by someone. And if the professor teaching the course doesn't do it, it's going to come from one of the students for sure. And that is the essential counterweight to the sobriety. It's what reminds us as we develop our sober habits that if we are to be responsible in our sobriety, we have to be open to all of the wide horizons of opportunity that the law is meant to open out to all of us. That wildness, the madness, is the liberation that our sobriety demands. And somehow between the mad liberation and the steadying sobriety, we not only survive, but we flourish, have flourished, still flourish to this day, and will continue to flourish on and on and on.
Harold, you are known for, among other things, mentoring a generation of public servants and modeling a life of service yourself. And today, many of our graduates are serving the country, even at the highest levels, including, of course, the Vice President of the United States. I also hear from some students and young graduates that they are struggling to find their way into public service. So I want to ask you, what is the secret sauce in this place that sends people out to do this work? And how should the school make sure that it is continuing to launch the leaders of our country?
Well, we're all very privileged, and so we have to give back. When I went to my first job, my mother asked me, I told her what firm I was working for, and she said, "Did they need you the most?" And the answer was no. When I was a kid growing up here in New Haven, I read a quote from Kingman Brewster, who was being savagely criticized And he said, I didn't become president of Yale to preside over a finishing school on Long Island Sound. The idea was that this is a place that's going to give public service, and it's going to make the country better. Now, our students now, many of them have done extensive service before they even come to law school. And so over the course of a career, another fantastic change is that careers have lengthened. So now you can work until your 70s, 80s, 90s, which means that in the front end of your career, where these students are, you can experiment and do more things. So this might not be one of the many wise things Guido told me is, fish where the fish are biting. I don't know when exactly he told me this, but I think about this all the time. In the government today, federal government today, maybe the fish aren't biting as much as you'd like, or they're biting too much. But that doesn't mean that, but to work for the government is hard in the best of times. So this is a time to work somewhere else, maybe, or to work against the government in the public interest. And over a career, over a lifetime, you'll get a chance to serve. And I've been in the government 10 years of my career. I've taken the oath of office 9 times. Those are the most important oaths I've taken, apart from my wedding vows. And to me, that's why I became a lawyer. And I think for the students, I tell them that that's why they should become a lawyer. There are so many ways they can serve from so many different roles. But I think they have to consider that as part of their mission. And I say to them, this is why we brought you here. This is why we brought you here. It's not so that you just feather your own nest, but that you go out and make the world better than the one that you found.
Okay, let's do a lightning round. So I'm going to ask you to first turn to your colleague on the left. So Guido, we're going to start with you, and you're going to turn to Heather. Tell us an important lesson that you have learned from this colleague.
So I could talk about what has already been said about Heather and how she saw that what I did, Harry with me, had done about setting up loan deferral, loan forgiveness, so that everybody could come and not be overwhelmed by loans. She saw that that didn't work for the poorest of people, and so put in the program that she did. And that was immensely important. But what else she did, which was extraordinarily important, was to focus on this law school's role as the École Normale Supérieure, the training place of teachers, of leaders in the society. But this was, together with the fact that we are paradigm breakers, that as scholars we are always doing the new, but we are also training people to lead this country. And she did that and focused on that in a way which was extraordinary. And I learned from that, and I'm very grateful for that.
Here, here.
I learned from Harold that the job of the dean is mostly invisible and involves an enormous amount of selflessness if you do it right. So I cannot describe to you what it is meant to stand in Harold's shoes, because I know every bit of work that he put into it. When I was a faculty member, I saw it. I saw him working tirelessly, and I only knew a fraction of what he did. And the thing that is magic about Harold, and that I think is true of all great deans, is that they are better telling other people's stories than their own, and they take joy from other people's joy. So if I can tell a Harold story, Harold went to this other obscure school in the north that had its 200th anniversary just a few years ahead of us, came back shaking his head in disdain because they had all these boring panels where people were asked, what would you have done had you not become a Supreme Court justice? And they'd say, I'd be an art historian. These were not our alums, for the record. And Harold just shook his head. He says, you know what I want to be? He says, I would want to be the third base coach for the Red Sox. And the reason is because you're there to coach. And sometimes you're just there saying, keep steady, hold on. But every now and then you get to say to someone, run like the wind, run like the wind. That is Harold Coe.
Well, I met Tony Kronman 41 years ago. He was actually the first person to interview me for a job here. And although I think he voted against me, everybody else on the committee did. But since then, I cannot tell you how much I've learned from Tony. Let me say first, it's not easy to be the dean after Guido. And there was only one person who had to do that. Secondly, I'll tell you, it was not easy preserving this building and this home for this school on the same site, looking as beautiful now as it did when it was first built. We could easily have done it in a different way, not as well. We could have moved to a different site, and Tony kept us here and renewed our home. But I think the thing that Tony did most for me was in that very first meeting, when he was talking to me, he conveyed to me the notion that loving the intellectual life and the students and the faculty of Yale Law School could be a lifelong mission, and that it could be exciting at every single stage of that, including whether you're the dean or not the dean, whether you're involved in the school administration or not, whether you're teaching, whether you're writing. And I never forgot that excitement. And I see it with him today. You know, when I go in the hall, he's telling me about the case he's going to teach. And I can only think one thing: Tony, why do you look so much younger than I do? And then I clear it out and I said, that Tony just has not changed in that respect. It's just a wonderful, wonderful quality.
Yes. Tony on Guido.
So I circle back to Guido, and the answer is just transparently obvious. Institutions are abstractions. Even great institutions are abstractions. They live, they flourish if they do, they endure if they do, because some number, often it's a pretty small number, of great men and women are devoted to them heart and soul, and embody, literally embody in their physical and mental selves the life of the institution they represent and lead or serve. And there is no one who has fulfilled that role of exemplification more completely and enthusiastically and tirelessly with breathtaking energy than Guido Calabresi. And I mean, Guido said recently at another gathering that he had known personally every dean of the Yale Law School. And I thought to myself, that really can't be. That would go back to, I don't know, 1820 or something like that. But you know what? Because Guido said it, I'm prepared to believe it. And honestly, though I haven't known all the deans of the Yale Law School, I can say with utter confidence that from the day we began our life as an institution back in those ancient vaporous days when it wasn't even clear that we were a school yet, there has never been anyone who has loved this place more, whose love has been more infectious, spread more liberally among all of us. We are all, I think, the beneficiaries of being contained within Guido's immensely spacious affection for this place. So, selfishly, for that, I thank you. But I can't really say selfishly, since I'm speaking on behalf of everybody in this room and every graduate of the Yale Law School. Guido.
So you all undoubtedly had enormously successful tenures as dean, and yet, what is one thing you wish you had done differently?
Well, this is a little complicated. It has to do with a relationship with the university. I wished I had been able to convince the university to do something differently about retirement. They passed, while I was dean, a law that said that retirement age was forbidden because it was age discrimination. But there was an exception to that, and that exception was for managerial activity. I wanted, but I didn't do it right, to convince the university that most teachers in a faculty actually had two jobs. One of them was teaching and writing, for which they could do forever. The other was management, including appointments and other such things. And I wanted to convince the university that on that, as in being deans or presidents, there could be a retirement age. The advantage of that would be that older people would get out of the way of the young in things the young ought to decide, but at a certain age, the faculty members could continue to teach, maybe earn half salary, which with their retirement accumulated would be just fine, and then go on for that indefinitely. I didn't do it right. The university council said we can't do that, we might be sued, and so we're still stuck with a thing which doesn't really work well. That's what I would have changed. I would still try to change it. It's much harder to do now because of how the law has changed. But that's my problem.
Heather?
You know, early on in my deanship, I was under the impression that the only thing that I was doing was governing a school of 600 students. And it took me a little while in this era to realize I was governing on a national stage. And so I would do things that would be perfectly normal if you were governing a small school of 600 students, and we would find ourselves in the world that has now become all too familiar to universities across the country. And so it took a while to figure that out. Eventually, you know, we could see around the corner and put in place a lot of changes that have really helped us in the last few years. But boy, those first few years were rocky as a result.
Tali, I don't think I would have done anything different as dean, but there is one thing I would have done differently. I would have gone to Yale Law School.
Very good.
Literally, you know, I went to see Guido, who I knew, and asked him before I made my law school choice, where should I go? And he said, well, what are you thinking about? And I said, I'm thinking about going to this other law school. And he said, well, they have the greatest university in the world, but we have the greatest law school in the world. And I thought, what a load of rubbish. But I went there, and I had a okay experience, just okay. And I thought that's what law school was. And then I came here with my wife, who had, I think, also not had a wonderful experience in law school. And after a week, she said, how is it? And I said, how come I didn't know this place existed? Like, how could I be so stupid? I really was shocked, you know, because, you know, you think you know. But I said, this is just night and day. And then I said, I don't think I'm leaving. And I haven't.
It's difficult to confront regrets. I have one, though. I was very much preoccupied in the early years of my deanship with what I perceived to be the widening gap between the academic branch of our profession and the rest of the profession. It seemed to me that the legal professoriate and the bar and the bench and lawyers in general who were doing all the many things lawyers do other than teach law, that they were moving apart, farther apart than they had been once upon a time, maybe in my nostalgic imagining of the way things used to be. And I thought about that, and I worried about it, and moved by something Bori Bitker, who many of you will remember, suggested to me in an animated lunch conversation at Maury's. I decided to try to bridge that widening gap by creating a magazine that would be serious and academic and intellectual, but at the same time readable, unlike what I feared most of our law reviews and law journals were becoming. And so I did that, and it worked until it didn't work. And I don't know that I could have designed a better vehicle to achieve what it was I hoped to achieve. And at the end of it, I felt a kind of disappointment, not for my own sake personally, but for my inability to address what I thought was a meaningful issue for the profession in general. And I wish that I had a cure that I could say today I had missed then, and if only I'd seen the light and gone this way instead of that way, things would have been altogether different. But I don't. But I will say this. Sitting here this afternoon with all of you gathered here from your countlessly different paths in life and in the profession, I don't feel that concerned at all, not an atom in it. And maybe I just was worrying about it too much, and the Yale Law School is proof that I oughtn't to have been quite as concerned as I was at the time.
Okay, this one really requires at least a year-long course of study, but here it is in a lightning round anyway. Is artificial intelligence good or bad for our profession?
I know nothing about artificial intelligence. The only thing I can tell you about artificial intelligence, and I will, is that another judge on my court and I, when we disagree on a case, often exchange limericks, bad poetry. Quite fun sometimes. If you say you dubitante, are you really pro orante? I think there's something of that in Dante. One of my law clerks, seeing that a few years ago, decided that he would use artificial intelligence to create a poem or two in my voice. He did so. And the poems were very much in my voice, but they were lousy poetry. And that's all I can tell you about artificial intelligence.
You know, so we're not paying attention to the lightning round part of this.
I noticed, Heather.
Bad for the profession.
It's all good.
Bad for the profession, good for Yale Law School. Bad for the profession because it's eliminating that time you spend as a lawyer apprenticing, because they're going to be able to skip over that step, and so we're going to lose the ability to have people trained with lawyerly judgment. Good for Yale Law School because we create wide-ranging thinkers, and you will always need those.
Obviously, it depends on how it's managed. You know, was Westlaw good or bad? Was word processing good or bad? these technological innovations come along. But I agree with Heather. We can't consider it perfect. Just check your autocorrect. But at the same time, we cannot let artificial reasoning replace the reasoning of lawyers that we try to teach at the highest level. We can't let the students substitute that, or we'll get a lot of briefs that sound like Guido, but they're not Guido.
I would echo what Heather said. I have my humanistic doubts about the limitations of artificial intelligence and believe that we can and must and will continue to train lawyers with a judgment and wisdom that can't be captured by a machine or reduced to an algorithm. But I also think that the revolution that is upon us, if indeed it is a revolution, this is meat for our table. The Yale Law School thrives at moments of disruption and discombobulation. Think about the 1930s. And think of what the Yale Law School was like in the 1930s. Every piece of every bit of furniture in the room was in motion. And we were at our best. We were on our game. In some ways, it was in that crisis of innovation and confusion that the modern Yale Law School was born. So if this is a crisis of borning, if that's true, I don't want to say bring it on. That would be naive and self-indulgent. But I do say we're at the Yale Law School ready for this. This is something we will make an object of study and reflection and practical concern in a way that no other institution in the country is quite prepared to do.
So, perhaps related, as you know, our law school famously requires very few courses, gives students a lot of freedom. If you could add one required course to the curriculum, what would it be?
Well, I don't like required courses, and I think that people at Yale Law School are doing so many different things that they can pick the courses that they want better than the faculty can say for them. On the other hand, if there were something to be added, it would be this. I think we are right in the beginning to have essentially required contracts, torts, criminal law, or something like that, because they are the three sides of my cathedral article. Constitutional law to give a public perspective and procedure to do the adjective. What might be missing is not an important course. All the courses are important. What could be more important than taxation or this or that for some of them? If I added anything, it would be something which would cause the students to get a better perspective of the whole of the law. That might either be legal history or it might be comparative law, but so to focus on how another society dealt with the same problems that we are dealing with now in our way, so that they could see what was the same and what was different. That might be something that would be particularly useful, whatever area then the student went into.
I would have we are now teaching legal ethics to all of our students, you'll be pleased to know. But if I could assign a course, it would be ethics writ large. Legal ethics are important, but the truth of the matter is so many of our alumni are so quickly thrust into a position of leadership, and it is very hard to know in the chaos of a crisis, in the middle of whatever your institution you're in, when the ethical slide has begun. And to me, it is essential that just as our students develop pattern recognition in all of the subjects that Guido named, that they develop pattern recognition and their own moral compass to think about the problems that they're actually going to face frighteningly soon when they get there, so that we can say about every one of our Yale graduates, we are proud of the decisions that they made.
Well, obviously, Tali, I think that procedure should be a 2-semester required course.
I was hoping you would say that.
But, procedure writ large. Procedure is 4 things: jurisdiction, due process, professional roles, and relationships between systems. And if you have that grasp of procedure, you can work in any legal system in the world. And I know that from having tried to do so. But I also agree with Heather, I think, in what she's saying, that it's so important that our students live the moment of having somebody else's life in their hands and their professional skill and commitment, because that's when you know whether you have what it takes. And I think our clinical courses do that. I think our good leadership courses do that. It has to expose the students not just to following instructions, but actually making those decisions yourself. And within that environment, I try to teach in every class what I call the moot court of meetings. We do moot courts of oral arguments, and many students never have oral arguments. But you go to hundreds and hundreds of meetings where you have to try to persuade people to their face of something they may not believe. And there's an art to doing that well and an art to not doing it. And I think we just have to teach students how to understand how to do that. And that's what I try to do in my classes.
Well, in the spirit of voluntarism, which is of the essence of this place, I would say that students should be required to take a course either in Plato or Aristotle. But on the clear understanding that the students who chose Plato had made a terrible mistake. Now, that's a ridiculous thing to say, but there's a serious thought behind it, which is this. One of the habits that we're in danger of losing is the habit of reading long and complicated works slowly and with the attention and the self-discipline that requires. We are encouraged to move too quickly and to assert our own views too emphatically. And I think anything, Plato and Aristotle would be my choice, but almost anything which encouraged the opposite set of habits would be of value and would be part of, not the whole, but part of the breeding ground or cultivation of that species of wisdom, which is more than just technical knowledge, and in the age of illiterate artificial intelligence that's maybe upon us, will be the most valuable skill to possess.
Okay, so Heather, the lengthier answers to a lightning round were built into the model, but I am going to ask you all 2 more questions that I think require short answers. The first is, in your experience, what has been the hardest thing to teach, but the most important thing to learn at the law school?
Well, I think that's very easy. The hardest thing to teach is that excellence without decency and humanity and love is a negative. That you must, in what you do in law, focus on your ideals and not just on careerism. That you must be true to what you believe in and follow it, and that is the essence of an education, and that what you must be. It is both easy to say and very hard to teach, because the whole world is always pushing in other directions. But that is what in every class, in every issue that we give to our students, we must make them think that they must be decent human beings who do the best for the world as they see it, but do the best because they think it is the best and not because it will get them one step forward.
You know, I think the hardest thing to teach a Yale Law student is that they belong here. You know, the remarkable thing about having the admissions pool that we do and the students that come here is you would think that they would come here confident that they belonged here because it's impossible to make a mistake when you're making the cuts that we're making. And yet, every student comes here and they start to talk to one another and experience a crisis in confidence, and they are sure somehow there's... My first small group, I think 13 of the 14 students came to tell me that they weren't keeping up, and the 14th was just too embarrassed to have the conversation. When I was dean, I would try to jolly them out of it. I used to tell them, you know, the secret to law school is that you think that everyone else sounds really smart and you sound stupid. The truth is you all sound stupid at the beginning. But the truth of the matter is that when you are teaching these students who are dazzling, who are learning law at a pace that is unimaginable at any other place, who are by the end of the semester putting on their lawyer superhero capes and doing astonishing things, and yet they don't believe in themselves. I love them for it because it suggests a modesty and a decency that I appreciate, but it also makes me crazy.
So I've met thousands of lawyers. The scarcest quality in a lawyer is courage. It's not intelligence. Everybody at a certain level is very intelligent. It's not how hard you work. Everybody at a certain level works very, very hard. But some people have courage or learn courage, and some people never do. And we see it all around us. We've seen it in the last year in a graphic way. And I think that that is the thing that we need to teach our students.
I think, Tali, I would say the hardest thing I've ever had to teach was the class I taught this morning. And if you'd asked me Wednesday when I taught the class before this one, I would have said the very same thing. And I guess I've always felt that my highest responsibility as a teacher at the Yale Law School wasn't to go into class and convey some knowledge I had, because my knowledge always feels to me when I'm on the threshold of walking into the classroom so fragile and thin. But the one thing I can convey is my own sense that this is, for these hours while we're together, sitting around the table, the most important thing on earth. I feel it, and you must feel it too. And if you do, and it sinks down, you will take that seriousness to heart, and it will become an essential, vital part of your own feelings of responsibility to yourself as an individual, and to the profession as a lawyer, and to the country that you serve.
Thank you. So in closing, and perhaps in summary, I would like for you to please describe the Yale Law student in one word.
Blessed.
Glorious.
What?
Glorious.
Glorious.
I'm going to use 2 words. Our future.
Young and vital and beautiful, and tremulous, and I'll stop there. I could go on for a long time.
I love that. Blessed, glorious. What was the
Tremulous.
tremulous, young, vital, beautiful. Thank you all so much. This was really terrific.